Well, China's president is hoping to shore up economic ties with Southeast Asia. Xi Jinping is currently in Vietnam as part of a three-nation tour he's undertaking against the backdrop of crippling tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. Let's get more on President Xi's trip now with Dr. Raji Pillai Rajagopalan, resident senior fellow with the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Raji, good evening and good to have you on the program with us today. Now, in the context of Trump's trade war, Xi Jinping says that he wants support from ASEAN states in countering Donald Trump's tariffs. What do you think Xi Jinping is seeking from Southeast Asia?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It's very interesting to see how Xi Jinping is trying to project China as the force of stability, certainty, and predictability. But I think we need to see how this plays out. China has been quite disruptive in the region, both in terms of trade and, of course, in security terms. And we all continue to see that. So Xi has a lot of work to make sure there is conformity between his actions and words, in a sense. Because this is not the first time she's trying to do this kind of a stunt. He has done this before. The first time when Trump took office, so in 2016 and 2017, she, as well as other senior Chinese officials, went to World Economic Forum, Munich Security Forum, and made a case for upholding the liberal international order, Xi's projection of himself as the biggest champion of globalization, etc. So we've seen this before, and it did not go very far for a couple of different reasons. One, even though there was a certain amount of wariness about the Trump administration when he took office the first time, Trump also had some very good statesmen-like senior officials in State Department, Defense, Treasury, Commerce departments. And I think they managed to keep the U.S. policy somewhat balanced. And on the other hand, China was continuing its aggressive behavior. So the yawning gap between China's rhetoric and its action finally became issues for a lot of Southeast Asian countries. So China could not really win over hearts and minds of its neighbors. In fact, the neighbors have horror stories of China, given the continuing territorial and sovereignty-related disputes that China has with many of Southeast Asian countries. So this time around, again, it's unclear, but China is clearly trying to make full use of the opportunity created by the Trump administration because of its haphazard policies, imposing tariffs, withdrawing it, etc. And so clearly you can say the last time she went to Malaysia was 12 years ago, Cambodia was 9 years ago. Vietnam was, of course, more recent in December 2023. So she is clearly seeing an opportunity that he does not want to lose. So the rhetoric will continue, but we need to see how far the countries in the region will buy into the Chinese rhetoric, in a sense.
Yes, I think so. Is the situation different? Do you think various countries might reciprocate and take a softer stance with Beijing because of these steep tariffs that they are facing? I mean, Vietnam, 46%. Bearing in mind, different Southeast Asian countries do have different levels of closeness to Beijing than others.
Yeah, there is that clearly is an option, but I think the countries also don't want to completely align one way or the other with China or in the US. They both want to, the countries in the region want to have choices, want to make sure that they are left with a lot more strategic maneuverability in terms of being able to manage both China and US in a sense. Clearly, there is an opportunity, and clearly the Trump administration has thrown these countries off the mark in a sense, because it's not even like 3 months in office and he has already gone back and forth on tariff policy. But if you look at how these countries are responding to Trump's policy there, each of these countries in the region are trying to reach out to the Trump administration for discussions on tariffs, tariff policies, economic disruptions, and trade imbalance and all of that stuff. So clearly they want to attain some semblance of balance in that relationship with the U.S. as well, despite the disruptions that we see, in a sense.
Yes, and then Donald Trump, in his words, says, China's visit to the region, to Vietnam, are basically intended to screw the U.S. Those were his words. Will they have any bearing at all for states in Southeast Asia?
Not entirely, because I think even though Trump has gone in a very chaotic manner in terms of creating, he hasn't even made any distinction between friends, partners, allies, adversaries. Everybody's clubbed in a basket. So there are problems that these countries do face, but at the same time, like he said, like I said, these countries do not want to completely align with China, because all of these countries also have a baggage of history, continuing border and territorial disputes, sovereignty-related issues. So while they may want to have some bit of a cushion in terms of breathing space with and try and see what can be done with China, they don't want to close the options with the US as well. In fact, each of these countries also have been developing closer partnership. Vietnam has been strengthening its partnership with the US for several years now. So I think there is a change that is taking place in the region also, given China's kind of very belligerent, very aggressive behavior towards all of its neighbors, in a sense.
Yes, it's interesting. I mean, he has been invited to visit Vietnam, and despite both countries having, territorial issues in the South China Sea, that they have accepted the visit by Xi Jinping. Do you think one party or the other might give a bit of ground as far as the South China Sea is concerned, with China's so-called 9-dash line?
Yeah, Vietnam. It's been a bit of a sort of it's not very clear. The current leadership, especially, seem to have had it does not want to completely antagonize China. Wants to, but at the same time, I think even for bigger countries like India in the neighborhood, in a sense, given the kind of we are immediate neighbors sharing a long territorial border and so on and so forth, you do want to see how best you can achieve what is the kind of balance and normalcy you can achieve in this relationship, even while opening up strategic partnership with the US and US and others. So it's Vietnam is building a closer partnership with the US, with India, with Japan, Australia. So every one of these countries is trying to maximize its strategic maneuverability while minimizing strategic vulnerabilities. I think that's something that you will continue to see. What are the best options that countries can play around with, in a sense?
Okay, Dr. Raji Pillai Rajagopalan, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you.